It's been building up a fair bit of hype over the last month, but it's finally here and it's definitely going to make some noise. Today, we're taking a look at the ProDrive Ghost. Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets and Runners. A couple months back, we released a written review on the ProDrive Drive. Very weird name, by the way. Like, is it the ProDrive Drive? Is it the Drive from the brand Pro? I'm a little bit lost with the whole naming system there, but anyways, it was a very unique paddle. I don't know why I'm referring to it in the past tense. The Drive very much still is a paddle, but anyways, it's an extended paddle. It's 19 millimeters thick, so as you can imagine, it's a lot of paddle to swing. It's also 8.5 ounces with the heaviest stock swing weight we've ever recorded with our Wilson machine, but what really sets it apart from other paddles is the Kevlar layer sandwiching the honeycomb core. Kevlar is a material that not many brands have experimented with, but basically what adding Kevlar to the Drive has done is give a 19 millimeter thick paddle a similar level of power to what a 14 millimeter paddle has. It later came out that the Drive was unibody thermoformed, and when I found that out, I have to say I wasn't very surprised because the power was really off the charts for such a thick paddle. And then I started thinking, oh my God, what if they started adding Kevlar to something thinner? That's pretty much what the Ghost is. But before we go on, remember that any of the paddles we feature on this channel you can check out on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. And please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, and let us know down in the comments section what paddles you want us to cover next. Anyways, the Drive started gaining a bit of a reputation, then fast forward a couple of months and they finally released the Ghost. And my goodness, it's a stunner. The Ghost is slightly shorter at 16.4 inches long. It only weighs 8 ounces and it has a 16 millimeter core. Now, if the shape does look familiar to you, that's because it's very similar, if not identical, to a paddle we all know very well, the Yola Hyperion. When I saw this shape, I gotta say I was pretty excited to take the Ghost out on court because I love the Hyperion and I've always wondered whether some of that love comes from this very unique design. Like the Drive, the Ghost is also unibody thermoformed and has the same Kevlar honeycomb core. Now, when I read that, I started thinking, oh my gosh, this paddle is going to be crazy. It's 3 millimeters thinner than a paddle that's already insanely powerful, so what craziness is this gonna have in store? Sure enough, I was right. The Ghost is insanely powerful, probably the most powerful paddle I've ever used. For those of you who have already played with thermoformed unibody paddles, you know just how powerful they are, but with that Kevlar core, this is on another level. The ball absolutely rockets off the paddle face. The pace and depth you get here is really quite incredible, and it makes for one of the most unique feeling paddles out there. Now do bear with me here for a second because I'm about to go into crazy detail about this paddle's feel because it is very hard to describe, but it's also extremely crucial to understand because it is so different to anything else. To achieve this crazy level of power, ProDrive basically designed the Ghost so that the ball would lose the least amount of energy during pocketing. That means that dwell time here is more or less non-existent. You barely feel the ball sink into the paddle bed. Instead, it just kind of pops off as soon as you make contact. The firmness is a pretty clear notch above any thermoform paddle, even the thinnest ones, and it reminded me a lot of those older, extremely thin gearbox paddles. The sound off the paddle face is also very different, and it's going to kind of help me explain the feel a little bit better, but basically it sounds like a gunshot when you make contact. It's got this really high-pitched, sharp noise. I'm gonna play a clip here of the Ghost compared to the bread and butter filth. It's a little difficult to tell on camera, but I think you can tell just how piercing this sound is, which is really ironic because this is called the Ghost, but it's not really ghost-like in that sense. So yes, it's extremely firm and the sound kind of backs that up, but I wouldn't describe that firmness as harshness. It's actually got a pretty muted feel. You don't feel those raw vibrations make their way into your hand like on some other paddles. That's probably down to the Kevlar core, which just provides a different feel to what we're used to with raw carbon on honeycomb. That's why I don't want to call this feel crisp because I associate that with a more raw feel, but it's more like poppy and muted, if that makes sense. When I saw the Ghost was shaped like a Hyperion, I got very excited about the potential stability and sweet spot size, but then I saw the 8 ounce weight and tested the swing weight and it came out really low, and my excitement went down a little bit. It's not so much that it isn't a stable paddle because it's unibody thermoformed and has a real firm feel, so it holds up quite well around the edges, but the actual sweet spot is really small. That's because the combination of a light static weight, low swing weight, and very firm feel basically concentrates the sweet spot into one tiny place on the paddle face. Having a sweet spot this this small was a bit punishing on pretty much any type of shot. If you don't make perfect contact, the response can be a little bit inconsistent, so I pretty quickly added a lot of lead to the lower portion of the paddle here, and that made a big difference. And yes, I know that 1/2-inch lead tape would be a lot more efficient to use, but I don't have that in my bag right now. That boosted static weight, swing weight, stability, and most importantly, expanded that sweet spot hitting zone so that the paddle was a lot more forgiving, but it also gave it a plushness that I was very surprised to feel. Without the lead, this is a really tough paddle to control. Not only does that instantaneously powerful feel mean that if you want any softness, you basically have to bring it yourself, but also that really small sweet spot means that if you're not making perfect contact, the ball can kind of go anywhere. Even compared to other 16mm thermoform paddles, the control is a bit lacking. Those at least have some element of softness to them, and they have a big sweet spot. The Ghost is more like those older gearbox paddles that were super punishing in the soft game. That's why I think adding lead is pretty much necessary, and the control became so much better when I did. Like I said, the lead added a surprising element of plushness to it, and when you combine that with the muted feel that I mentioned earlier, it actually became pretty good in the soft game. The Kevlar layer is what gives it that muted feel, and a lot of people like that feel when they're dinking. You just have to break through the Kevlar layer's initial rigidity, and I think a bit more mass is the perfect way to do that. My absolute favorite thing about the Ghost is just how quick it is through the air. I know it's 0.1 inches shorter than other extended paddles, but I think that quickness has more to do with this rounded off top portion of the head here than the minimally shorter length. It's much quicker than those extended paddles with that more traditionally squared off portion of the head here, and even after I added about 1/2 ounce of weight, it was still very maneuverable. Spin is kind of a similar story to control with the Ghost. It wasn't great before I added the lead, but then got much better once I did. That instantaneous pop means you don't really feel the ball grab onto the raw carbon face to add spin. It's almost like it pops off too quickly and doesn't actually benefit from all that raw carbon grittiness. Because you increase dwell time when you add the lead, the top sheet can actually grab onto the ball a lot more, which means that it can work more of that spinny, gritty magic. So with the lead, I'd say spin potential is somewhere in the middle of all the thermoform paddles I've used. Lower than the Vadix Carbon Powers and Bread and Butter Filth, but higher than the Perseus and Model E Elite. I also think this shape complements a really spin-friendly swing pattern. Because it's a little bit whippier, you can accelerate it through contact a little bit faster, and that always helps with spin. Well, for one, if I haven't made it abundantly clear, the Ghost is a paddle that gets instantly transformed with a bit of lead. It's almost like all it needs to push it over this imaginary ledge is a little bit of lead tape, and then it gets so much better in pretty much every characteristic. I do still think it's primarily a singles paddle. The only thing that lends itself to doubles here is that good maneuverability, but still there are shorter, more maneuverable paddles that are also better for touch control and the soft game. The Ghost power is really what sets it above the rest in terms of playability characteristics. Like I mentioned, it's the most powerful paddle I've ever used, and I came to really appreciate that on any type of point ending shot, like a put away volley, a heavy ground stroke, and even on serve. It's definitely a little bit tough to control, but for those of you that already have pretty soft hands, add a lot of lead to this thing. Don't worry, you're not going to make it too sluggish, but you'll gain a lot of dwell time, you'll gain a lot of feel, and basically gain in control altogether. I really enjoyed playing with the Ghost. I think this is going to help put ProDrive on the map even more than the Drive did, and I definitely think they're onto a winner here with this Kevlar core design. I'm going to keep playing around with some weight combinations here because I think I'm close to dialing it into spinny, powerful, controlled perfection, but for now that's going to be it from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that if you do want to demo the Ghost, you can come visit us in store or check it out online at racketsandrunners.ca.